Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. So obviously, let me introduce myself. My name's James. I am the head of content at Croud. And I'm joined by Billy, who is the content account director and content team at Croud as well. I'm going to take you through a deck here, just talking about how you can get the most out of YouTube. So I'm going to kick off with the first half of it, and then Billy will take over the second half as well. So we'll start, I think. The stuff we're going to cover today, so we're going to talk about thinking beyond the brand. Just going to talk about some brief insights that we found looking at some brands on YouTube. And then we're going to talk about optimizing your content for YouTube. And then Billy's going to take us through the strategy for new content for YouTube as well. So we'll start with thinking beyond the brand. So just a few things to note. YouTube is a social network. It carries all the same engagement characteristics of Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. YouTube is the second biggest search engine after Google. And 90% of all views of brand-related content come from consumer uploads and not official brand videos. And successful brands on the channel understand that simply broadcasting commercials and other highly branded videos is unlikely to generate the levels of interest that they're actually seeking. So to win from a content marketing approach, brands need to focus on the things that people want to hear from them rather than just what they might want to tell them. So really, for brands, it's about finding that sweet spot between creating content which is value-adding and interesting, but also has that brand relevance as well. So when we talk about value-adding and interesting content, we're talking about content that can actually offer valuable insight into a topic and be useful to the end user, or content that is genuinely creative and works as a piece of standalone content, regardless of it having an association with a brand. And then, of course, with the brand relevant side of it, the content obviously should tie in with the brand and its ethics, but not essentially be about trying to sell products. So it's just about finding content that fits within that sweet spot. So some brief insights that we're going to cover for you guys. We decided to look at 3 clothing brands just to see how they were utilizing the platform currently. And what we found was across all the channels that a large proportion of the overall views were coming from just 5 videos. So for Stussy, 38% of their viewing was from 5 videos. Levi's was slightly higher at 48%, and Carhartt Europe was actually 95%. So this indicated to us that some improvements could be made to the other content on the channels to make it appeal to their audience a little bit more. Rather than those 5 videos that are driving so much of that viewing numbers. We look at sentiment levels. They were mixed across the videos on the channels. So that kind of highlighted to us the kind of content that works best for engagement and where these brands might want to focus more attention on for new content going forward. And optimization of the content across all the 3 brands was universally poor, showing us that instead of relying on the legacy of their names, and the people that already know about them, there's still more that can be done to drive performance on the channel. So looking at sentiment in more detail, I've just picked 3 of the top videos here for each of those channels. So if we look at Levi's, for example, their top performing video is an ad that they produced called Circles, which had viewing numbers of 26 million, 39,000 likes and 11,000 dislikes. So that works out at an engagement level of 0.19%, which isn't great, obviously. So to us, that kind of indicated that there was probably a huge ad spend behind this piece of content, but not necessarily a piece of content that people were organically searching for or going back to actually engage with and watch or find, found it as a piece of content that was creative or useful in its own right. In comparison, we looked at Stussy as well. So a video they had which performed really well for them was this video just entitled John Kay, who is someone they've actually collaborated with on some clothing. And they created a retro style Ren and Stimpy cartoon to actually promote this new collaboration. And it wasn't trying to sell a product, it was literally just a really fun cartoon, quite funny. In that kind of Ren and Stimpy style, and it really spoke to their target audience and demographic. And although obviously the views are a lot lower probably didn't have as much ad spend behind it as something like a Levi's ad would have. The sentiment levels and engagement percentage are far higher at 1.88%. And then moving on down to Carhartt Europe as well. So they produced a video piece of content with Jason Momoa, also known as Aquaman. And this is an 8.5 minute long video called Canvas of My Life. And it's literally like really beautifully shot video about his life, how he got into acting, what he did before, and all that kind of thing. So it really speaks to their core demographic. Is a really useful piece of content, nice piece of content, genuinely interesting piece of content in its own right. And again, engagement levels for that were higher than you might have found on something like the Levi's ad. So it's coming in at 1.3% as well. So we also looked at the optimization of the videos on each of these channels, and we found it to be lacking for all of them really. So in terms of description length, you know, all the channels are doing quite well. They've got the optimal description length, but in other areas they seem to be lagging behind. So tag length is not really optimal. The use of cards and use of end screens, and also there's some more work that could be done when it comes to sharing on social as well. So I was going to talk about optimizing your content next. So YouTube's algorithm is predominantly based on metadata and engagement, meaning much of the same theory that goes into website optimization should also be applied to video content. So we've identified sort of 8 key areas of optimization that can be done to brands' content that's already on the channel, and obviously should be kept in mind for when you're uploading new pieces of content as well. So they are titles and descriptions, tags and categories, custom thumbnails, transcriptions, captions and translations, cards and end screens, the integration of product links below videos, social cross promotion, and obviously playlists as well. So I'll go through these one by one. Starting with titles and descriptions. So with your video titles, you basically want to make sure that the length of them is between 50 and 60 characters with any target keywords front loaded. Popular search phrases to optimize around can be discovered using sort of YouTube autocomplete, competitive research. So by sorting competitive video lists by most popular and researching the titles, descriptions and tags, you can see what kind of terms they're targeting and sort of mimic that as well. There's existing video analysis of your own data. There's third-party tools like vidIQ, which is a really great keyword tool. There's a lot more than just keyword stuff as well, but it's really useful in finding useful video titles. And then there's also general keyword research tools, so platforms such as Ahrefs and keywordtool.io, which allow analysis by search platform, and they display volume, competitiveness, and related search queries. Moving on to video descriptions. So the first paragraph of each video description should be approximately 100 to 125 characters. The full video description can be more extensive and around 200 words, and they can feature a few essential keyword phrases as well. Including a link, ideally to a relevant product or category page on the website, is a good thing to include. And it should, if you put it high enough up in the description, it should then appear above the show more expansion link as well. So moving on to number 2, so tags and categories. So YouTube tags are essentially words and phrases that you can include in your YouTube video description, and they let your viewers and YouTube know what your videos are about and can help them rank higher in the platform search results. So the ideal tag is usually between 2 and 3 words, and each video should have around 8 to 12 relevant tags or more, with the most important keyword featuring in the first one. You can include brand names, product types, queries, names, places, etc. Anything that's kind of deemed relevant to the video. And research videos that rank well for your target terms and their related videos to identify relevant tagging options for your own video. And here's 2 examples essentially of a video that has been tagged correctly and one that hasn't been tagged at all, actually, by Levi's. So the first is from CNBC, actually talking about Levi's, tagged relevantly, and Levi's not tagging their video at all. So number 3 is custom thumbnails. So according to YouTube, 90% of the best performing videos have custom thumbnails, and there's significant value in creating bespoke images designed to capture audience attention on desktop and on mobile devices. So the recommended dimension for these is 1280 by 720 pixels. This will scale to all sizes. You can use the clever use of arrows, highlights, brand colors, and typography to help catch the eye when scrolling through a feed. And the use of text on thumbnails needs to be carefully considered. The vast majority of YouTube use is on a small sort of screen, so any unclear or ambiguous text can be sort of counterproductive as well. So here's some examples on the left-hand side here of some good sort of bespoke custom thumbnails that have been created. And then on the right-hand side, this is just kind of the automatically generated thumbnail that you get when you just upload a video onto YouTube and don't put any specific actual image in there. So number 4 is transcriptions, captions, and translations. So YouTube will actually use automatic speech recognition to add subtitles, but the accuracy of this isn't perfect, as you probably know. So you can benefit greatly from providing exact text versions of your videos to improve accessibility and, of course, access to international audiences. So you should think about doing full transcriptions and closed captions. So providing a word-for-word text version of each video, along with explaining audio cues, sort of like phones ringing and stuff like that, helps improve the likelihood of it appearing for target queries, as well as the audiences that can engage with it. So we're talking about people who obviously potentially have hearing difficulties, as well as people on the commute going to work who don't want to have the volume on but still want to follow the video. And then you also need to think about multiple language subtitles as well. So all videos can have multiple language subtitled versions added. And this is obviously important for reaching new markets and wider audiences around the world. Number 5 is cards and end screens. So encouraging some kind of action from your video is vital. And YouTube offers a couple of features to help you do that. So cards, these are essentially links that appear on the screen at a designated time spot. And these are best sort of placed at a poignant moment in a video, maybe when a product is shown, for example. And they can come in many forms. So you can have sort of channel links directing users to view more videos, website links. You can ask people questions via polls, and you can have links to videos and playlist links as well. And then similar to that is end screens, but rather than sort of them interrupting the flow of the video, they appear at the end of the video for around up to 20 seconds. And again, they can allow for certain calls to action and encourage people to subscribe to your channel as well. Number 6 is the integration of product links below videos. So if you're registered as a merchant on Google Shopping, you can include direct links to your products under your video. Levi's have been doing this on some of their videos as well. And I think this offers like the clearest sort of route to return on investment from a video. If someone can look at a video, see the product that they want, look below the video and actually see a link to go and click on it and buy it, then that's obviously invaluable. Number 7 is social cross-promotion, which I think goes without saying really that if you really want to widen the reach of the videos on YouTube, by now most brands have probably built up a healthy amount of followers on various different social platforms, and you should be cross-promoting on those platforms as well to drive traffic. And playlists, number 8. So they are obviously popular as they allow you to mix and match your brand content with other related videos. So if you can make a playlist of some of the best sort of creative content that your audience wants to see, then there's a massive opportunity to keep an engaged audience coming back for more and obviously feeling like you really get them and what they're into. Featuring influencer content amongst your official videos is an excellent opportunity to engage with those influencers who will be happy to have their content featured by your brand. And this can obviously go a long way in building a diversified and engaged audience and can obviously build you some brand ambassadors along the way. And playlists also offer excellent insight into the types of videos that users want to see more of. So you can use YouTube analytics to see which videos in your playlist are actually getting viewed, and that will allow you to tweak accordingly the kind of content you're creating and curating as well. Cool. And so that's it from my portion of this. I'll pass you over to Billy, who's going to talk about strategies for new content.
Hi. Hopefully I don't drop out again. That was my internet is really not coping with this. But that's all the joys of like being out in the sticks, I guess. But yeah, I'm going to talk for a bit about how to like sort of strategize new content from really like a performance point of view. So I think on the next slide. Oh, lovely. So yeah, so when we're sort of talking about creating content for YouTube, it's important to remember that this is the second biggest search engine in the world, and really you do need to have some sort of strategy behind that around how you're going to make yourself available and how you're going to find yourself like listed within within YouTube. One of the ways that we would do this is sort of look at the data that goes into the back end of this, and to come up with that, we sort of typically would tailor our video content strategies into these three pillars. So the first is looking at like any brand queries. So anything that appears around your like branded terms. This is obviously like low hanging fruit. So for example, if we're looking at somewhere like Dickies is a brand that's, you know, was traditionally quite small, but is on the rise now, like quite substantially. So it's looking at places where we can hop on that brand conversation quickly, nice and early, and making sure that we're appearing there when people are searching, because you're not always going to have people going directly to Google to search, for example, or to Amazon, especially if it's like an informational query. You're going to want to make sure that you're appearing, especially for a younger audience like millennials and also Gen Z as well, make sure that you're appearing directly in YouTube and sort of covering that space and making sure that competitors can't get into there, which is good. The second is obviously like non-brand queries. So this would be sort of anything that's within your brand's sphere of influence. So anything that's related to you that you could sort of lend a voice to. I think it's really important here to be clear from the offset about where your brand does and does not have an authority to speak. So, you know, there's no point if you're, like just coming back to the example of Dickies, like going after food, for example, that to me doesn't make a huge amount of sense. Whereas, you know, if you're talking about workwear or being a hipster, maybe, then yeah, you've absolutely got the authority to speak on that. So looking at the queries here that you could potentially invest in and sort of create content around where you're an authority in that space. And then lastly, looking at like campaign messaging. So there's always going to be a need for you to host if you're a brand, like, you know, your old TV ads or, you know, ads that you've run on Facebook or whatever. They're always going to need to be accessible, and you're always going to need a place to host them. So it's definitely worth hosting them on YouTube and looking at making sure those videos are accessible, you know, after time. You know, if people want to go back and maybe go back and look at something like Jason Momoa, the video, you know, if that's what people are interested in. I can't imagine why. But yeah, going back and making sure that that's still accessible for people to go and find those videos if needed. So that's sort of how we would organize into the three pillars. I think on the next slide, please, James Rich.
Sorry, one sec. There you go.
There we go. So what we would sort of look at is, as an agency, we're, you know, a performance agency first and foremost. So we would always want to look at making data-driven decisions. And one of the ways that you can really do this is using vidIQ, which is a browser plugin for specifically designed for YouTube. And with vidIQ, you can enter specific queries. So again, just going down this example of like Dickies, which I'm going to use for the next couple of slides. We would sort of look at, you know, what are the queries here, both for, you know, the brand. So the top three there, like Dickies pants, Dickies 874, which is a type of trouser for them, you know, looking at these branded queries, but then also underneath that, looking at the non-branded as well, like skateboarding, you know, where can we appear there? vidIQ will then give you two metrics, which is volume and competition. So it will only give you like a low, medium and high, but it is a good indicator if you're looking for like I think it's a very, either it's free or it's a very minimal amount of money to get vidIQ, but it's definitely worth investing in to give you that sort of view around where we should be playing. And especially if you are a brand that's maybe new to YouTube and you don't have that, you know, extensive subscriber base yet, looking at the keywords that are high volume and low to medium competition and seeing if you can apply yourself there, and doing some research within vidIQ to make sure that you're going after these data driven, you know, you're going after these like search patterns and search queries to make sure that you're going to you know, people are finding your videos when they're going into YouTube, if that makes sense. But then also you can go wider than that as well. So this is obviously just using vidIQ as like a browser plugin, but then you can also cross-pollinate between like channels. So I think on the next slide, we have an example of, yeah, using holistic data. So for example, again, for Dickies, we would sort of look at people also ask queries. So for those of you that don't know, people also ask queries are like when you go to Google and you type in like, what is the date? And it gives you like a box at the top and it will show you what the date is. That's a people also ask query, essentially. So we've done a lot of research from an SEO point of view for Dickies to then say, you know, here are all of your queries, you know, that are relevant for you, for people also ask, both branded and non-branded. We can then cross-pollinate that and use all of that research and put that through vidIQ to then come out with these with these like competition and volume metrics, which is really useful because then you're actually able to do it a lot bigger and at a lot larger scale. So we can see really easily, you know, actually where should we be creating, you know, video content that people are going to engage with, both in, from YouTube and also from an organic search point of view. The other thing that's worth noting here is that I think there was a Google update, like I think it was like maybe like 6 months ago-ish, where basically they've started putting YouTube as like the top featured snippet in search results as well. So basically they've put YouTube has now gone to be the most visible website in the entire world, which makes sense, right? Because it's a Google-owned property. But you know, if you're appearing there and if you're the video that's in that top spot, it's a lot of real estate, it's very high click-through rate, and that's a lot of search traffic that you're ultimately going to get through to your YouTube videos as well, which is really useful. So it's worth considering this sort of data when you're sort of building out a YouTube strategy, both from an SEO point of view and from a YouTube point of view as well. I think on the next slide, we would talk about how to extract information from YouTube. So what we can do is, I'll talk about it a bit more in a second, but we've got a proprietary technology called Solomon. And basically Solomon can go into YouTube and through the YouTube API, it can pull out all of the, you give it a set of like queries, both brand and non-brand, and it will pull all of the like videos that are associated with those. So it'll pull all of the titles, all the keywords, metadata, it looks at the content freshness, it looks at the sentiment, pulls all the engagement metrics, all that stuff, and gives you like a nice big spreadsheet, which is really, really useful for like a data point of view for you to drill down into. But then I think on the next slide, we talk about how we analyze that a bit more. Yeah, so we export all of the data through the YouTube API to create that data set, and then Solomon actually looks and categorizes it into themes and topics, and then gives you a strategic view and a plan as well. So it plots not only how difficult it's going to be for you to rank in YouTube for that specific category set. So I think on the right there, we've got like funeral plans and stuff, but like ordinarily we'd have something maybe a little bit more exciting. But it gives you sort of difficulty and popularity as well along the bottom. So it will show you how engaging a particular topic is from a YouTube point of view, but then actually also how difficult it's going to be for you to rank in that area as well, which is really like, is a much more strategic way of looking at creating YouTube videos, rather than just looking at like a keyword in isolation and saying, you know, we're going to go after jeans, actually saying, right, where's strategic for us to be able to play in this area, which is really exciting, really. I think on the next slide, there's a bit more about this. Yeah. So yeah, so creating this strategic view, essentially you sort of plot your like video engagement, competitiveness, and engagement metrics in like a bubble chart. So a bubble chart is like a great way of displaying 3 different dimensions. So you'd be looking sort of where you can play in this area. So in this particular table, we've got the brand queries in blue and then the non-brand queries in red, and we can sort of look at where we can go after, you know, based on the engagement, what are we likely to get, you know, the size is about the I think the search volume that we would sort of expect for these sort of queries. And again, it is more about being more strategic in what you're creating and what also you're putting your money into, because obviously we all know videos, it's not cheap, is it really, to make? So it is about making more bang for your buck really when you're creating for YouTube. I think, yeah. And then this is one of the few final slides, but this looks like very scary at the moment, but basically this is what we would use to identify which of the 3 pillars you would sort of categorize your YouTube content into at the start. So you would obviously start where it's a start and then look at, is it a brand query, you know, is there search interest, and sort of follow the flow charts through to the very end. Hopefully Alex or whoever is on for marketing will share this deck round afterwards, so you can all have a look at this this workflow in your own time, but it's more about identifying, you know, which queries and which pillars this would sit under, especially if you're working at a large organization where you sort of would have different owners for different particular types of YouTube queries according to the 3 pillars that we've outlined before. So brand query, non-brand query, and then campaign messaging, for example. So this is helpful to understand actually who's in charge of this and where does that budget come from, as well as like another great reason we sort of use this sort of workflow as well. So that was really useful. And then lastly, it's also, you know, again, coming back to the point of us being a performance agency, we have to really determine success on everything that we do here. Unfortunately, performance is the sword that we live and die by, which is, you know, great for us all. But it's really important to look at these sort of 3 different pillars again and say, what are the ultimate KPIs that we're ascribing to like each of these different types of video. You know, if it's a brand query, for example, we would sort of recommend to assign referral traffic and subscribers to it, because you know that these are people, if people are searching for a brand query, they're already interested in your brand, right? So that would make sense that you would essentially only need a little bit of a push to turn them into a subscriber, for example. And if they're interested in the brand as well, it makes sense that they would maybe be looking for you to refer them to a section of the site where they can find more information. So they're good KPIs to sort of assign to that brand query column. And then if we look at like non-brand, again, engagement is a good one as well, because you can see actually, are people finding this interesting? And also if it's, you know, an area where your brand is supposed to be an authority, people should find this interesting and engaging. If they're not, then you have to ask yourself, why are we putting ourselves into this space? You know, why are we talking about this? If people don't find it engaging, is it the brand? You know, do we not have the authority here? Or is it particularly something that we're doing wrong with our tone of voice, or is it the user style? So engagement is a really good metric to use here to see actually whether we should continue to play in this space and to operate there. And again, subscribers is a good like secondary KPI, because you want to be pushing your brand into spaces where people don't know you, right? So you want to make sure that actually people are subscribing from those particular videos, and actually you're gaining a more loyal fan base. And then lastly, if we talk about campaign messaging, so again, just to refresh, like this is more your sort of TV ads that you might run, for example, that sort of campaign messaging. So you want to make sure that people are still continuously getting the views. I'm not, for this, I wouldn't particularly ascribe like hard KPIs to this, because it's more of a repository of information, but it is good to keep an eye on views, for example, or referral traffic as well, just to see, you know, you can compare side by side different video styles, for example, or different campaigns. You know, if it came to a year or 2 years later and you wanted to maybe rehash one of the campaigns based on the success that you've got on YouTube, like if people are still engaging with a particular TV advert from, you know, a couple of years ago, you know, maybe there's a solid reasoning there for you guys to refresh it and have like new stars, for example, or whatever that that idea might be. But that is a good way to keep an eye on them for that particular pillar. I think that is it. Yeah, so this is sort of an overall strategy summary from top to bottom, so including the parts that James Roach talked about before. But yeah, we would really always, the best thing to do is to do an in-depth competitor analysis. So extracting all the title tags, looking at all the videos, not just all of that like quantitative data, but also the qualitative as well, saying, you know, what sort of quality videos are they producing, how long are they, you know, what is the framing like, you know, what sort of celebs are they using, what influence, these sort of, you know, those sorts of things are really good questions to ask yourself before you start to move into that space, just so you know you can be on an even footing with your competitors when you're moving in there. I think definitely there's a strong case for optimizing your existing content. So making sure that you follow all of the steps that James outlined before, all 7 of those different bullet points there, you know, rewriting your titles, editing descriptions. This might seem like small, you know, tasks that aren't really worth your time, but actually they can be really, really beneficial, and especially in the cases of putting things in like links. Definitely worth it. And then looking at actually what is the strategy that you're going to use going forwards if you're moving into creating videos for YouTube. You know, are you feeding in keywords data from like SEO, or it might not be SEO, for example, it might be other paid social data, for example, that you might want to feed in there. And then looking at how you can plot these queries against various metrics. So either using, you know, something like vidIQ, or we would obviously use Solomon going to do that. And then looking at how you'd approach each category, how can we move into this, and then turning that into a calendar. So saying, you know, this is our inspiration is, you know, this Levi's video about X, and then actually how can we make something that's better than that? How can we assign the appropriate amount of budget to each of these to make sure that we're really going to nail this down and we're going to get a good solid return on our investment? And then lastly, obviously creating a reporting structure, because, you know, without reporting, what are any of us doing really? But yeah, basically making sure that you're assigning the appropriate KPIs to each of the videos based on the 3-pillar categorization model that we showed you before, and making sure also you're setting up regular review sessions to say, you know, it's the end of the quarter now, we've made 9 videos, how are they faring, you know, what sort of engagement do we get, and also where should we invest more heavily moving forwards depending on the engagement that we're getting from particular videos, for example. I think that's it. I think there are some Q&A questions. I think I saw them pop up.
Yeah, I've answered.
Oh, you've answered them
on the chat, yeah.
Oh,
so,
lovely. Oh, thank you for saying it's useful and interesting. I'm glad you thought so. I don't know if anyone else has got any other like Q&A questions that they want to ask us. Obviously, you can. There's a Q&A chat bubble at the bottom, which James has been very attentively answering questions in there. Or you can also, our emails are right there as well. So if you did fancy emailing us, just like any questions, I'm always happy to answer them. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, strictly work related. But yeah, oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it as well, Jane. That's good. So yeah, I think is that it? I think, yes.
It is, yeah.
Lovely. Well, yeah, that is it from us then, I guess. We might do a follow-up session about this where it's talking more about the qualitative element. So how to find talent, for example, is something that we were both conscious about when making this. So if that is of interest to you, please email either me or Roach and say that you would be interested in that, and then we'll have a look at pulling something like that together. Because I know that is obviously a big question that people quite often have, or around how to make it at home, or even in, you know, coronavirus times, for example, how to sort of make sure that you can make the best of filming at home. So yeah, just let us know if that's something that you'd be interested in. If not, I think we'll both leave now.
Yes, thank you very
Lovely.
much.